Welcome, curious minds, to another really exciting deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into the sheer chaos and compelling drama that was the British Grand Prix. That unfolded just recently, July 6th, 2025, right there at the legendary Silverstone circuit.
Yep, legendary and often very challenging.
Exactly. Our source material for this, let's call it a wild ride, is a whole bunch of stuff. Live race reports, minute-by-minute updates, post-race analysis, mostly from the great coverage over at F1 blogs.
They really do get into the weeds, don't they?
They do. And our mission today, basically to cut through all that noise, pull out the really important nuggets of knowledge, and, uncover the surprising facts from this completely unforgettable race. It's kind of your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on what was, frankly, one of the season's most unpredictable races.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. And the stage was set for chaos. I mean, right from the very beginning. Silverstone on race day, it presented some incredibly challenging conditions. You had this chilly air, only 17 degrees Celsius. The track was barely warmer, 23 degrees.
Not ideal.
Not at all. And then those strong, swirling Silverstone winds that can just, upset any car's balance. Plus, all of this was under this constant threat of rain. Forecasts were predicting heavy downpours, specifically around laps 15 to 17. It felt less like a forecast, more like a ticking time bomb.
Okay, so considering those pretty treacherous pre-race conditions, the big question, I guess, was tires. Oh, always tires in the wet. What were some of the, let's say, audacious calls we saw right from the pit lane? Who really put it all on the line, hoping the track would dry out fast?
Well, what's fascinating here is that, while most of the grid played it safe started on intermediates because the track was damp, we saw some genuinely bold calls, almost desperate, you could say. Right from the pit lane, you had drivers like George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Franco Colapinto. They all decided to start on dry tires.
Wow, that's brave. It's a huge gamble, a really high-stakes move. You're basically betting the track dries super quickly, or maybe you get a lucky safety car to switch back without losing too much time. It's all or nothing, really, a roll of the dice.
And looking at the actual starting grid, Max Verstappen, no surprise, on pole, felt like business as usual for him lately. But right behind him, the two McLarens, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, practically breathing down his neck.
Already setting up a potential fight there.
Yeah. And we also saw some shuffling from penalties in qualifying, didn't we? Fernando Alonso benefited, starting P7, and Carlos Sainz up to P9. That definitely spices things up before the lights even go out.
It does. And it perfectly foreshadows the unpredictable nature of the race, especially when you remember what Alonso said beforehand. F1 blogs quoted him saying, "If it rains, you can finish 5th or 15th.
Ah, perfect.
That one sentence just encapsulated the razor's edge everyone was on. It wasn't just about pace, it was about, survival and grabbing opportunity. It really felt like anything could happen.
So the stage was set for chaos. And it delivered almost immediately, didn't it? Even the start felt weird with that safety car formation lap. What was your take on how that set the tone?
Absolutely. That safety car lap was just the appetizer, wasn't it?
Yep.
It immediately told everyone, look, this isn't going to be a standard, straightforward race. And the first few laps were just a whirlwind of incidents. We got a rapid succession of virtual safety cars, VSCs.
Right, one after another.
Yeah. On the very first lap, Liam Lawson ran into trouble. Looked like a power unit issue, maybe. He had the limp off track. First VSC. Then, bam, lap 4. Gabriel Bortoleto unfortunately crashed out in turn 2. Another VSC.
So the field kept bunching up.
Exactly. And these VSCs, they're not just about bunching the field. They become these critical moments for potentially cheap pit stops. If a team's ready, they force snap decisions on tires, strategy, and it can create huge differences that win or lose a race right there. Makes every restart super tense.
Yeah, those restarts must have been nervy. Despite all that early chaos, though, Verstappen somehow held his lead through them. But we saw action right away, too. Pierre Gasly seemed to find amazing pace early on, quickly getting past Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, that was a good move. Show the Alpine had some pace in those conditions.
It was clear, no position was safe. Even the midfield battles were fierce right from the start. And as the race went on, the tension just kept building. We saw Oscar Piastri really start to put the pressure on Max Verstappen. Max, with that low downforce setup, he favors great for top speed on dry tracks, but less grip in the corners, especially crucial in the wet. He seemed to be struggling a bit.
He did look a bit more uncomfortable than usual, didn't he? Especially in those damp, tricky sections.
Yeah.
And that pressure from Piastri, it paid off decisively. What's fascinating is how quickly the lead changed hands. despite Verstappen being on pole with the supposedly dominant car. Lap 8, Piastri made his move. He used the DRS perfectly. Overtook Verstappen for the lead. Clean, confident pass. It really showed McLaren's strength in those conditions.
It really hammered home that, yeah, this wasn't going to be a walk in the park for Verstappen.
Not at all.
And almost right on cue, as if summoned by that lead change, the rain really started to come down properly. It wasn't just drizzle, it became a downpour. Turned the track into a strategic lottery.
Complete gamble time.
Yeah, we saw what F1 blogs and others called a festival of pit stops. Nearly everyone scrambled into the pits for fresh intermediates, just desperate for grip. Looked like absolute chaos on pit lane.
It was a frantic scramble.
Yeah.
And every 10th counted. In all that chaos, Lando Norris actually managed to get past Verstappen initially when Max went a bit wide. But then, interestingly, Verstappen got the position back during the pit stops. Partly because McLaren had a slightly slower stop compared to Red Bull's usual slick work.
Those pit stop gains and losses. Crucial.
Absolutely vital in moments like that. Proves precision under pressure is just as important as pure speed.
And just when you thought things couldn't get any wilder, boom, safety car again. A really nasty crash on lap 18. Isaac Hadjar went off hard at cops. And because visibility was so terrible, like a whiteout apparently,
Awful conditions.
he impacted Kimi Antonelli, who just couldn't see him in time. Horrible incident. That brought on another full safety car, bunched everyone up again. You started wondering if they could even continue safely.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Behind that safety car, Oscar Piastri, still technically leading, pulls this controversial move. He braked, according to the FIA, excessively, nearly caused Verstappen right behind him to run into the back of him.
Whoa, risky stuff behind the safety car.
Incredibly aggressive, clearly trying to control the restart pace, maybe catch Max off guard, build a gap. But it was right on the edge, pushing the limits way too far.
And the stewards didn't hang about, did they? F1 blogs reported pretty quickly an investigation was launched. And the result, a significant 10-second penalty for Piastri. That's just monumental when you're leading. Basically took him out of the win contention right there.
A massive blow. And it sent a very clear message about what's acceptable and what's not behind the safety car.
Right. But it wasn't just Piastri facing a setback, was it?
No, it wasn't. And this raises a really important question, doesn't it? In these super high-pressure, low-grip situations, how much do even tiny errors snowball, even for the best drivers? Because on the restart, lap 21, Max Verstappen completely uncharacteristically spun, lost the car completely.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that.
Dropped him all the way from P2 down to 11th, just like that. A genuinely shocking moment, a rare glimpse of vulnerability from Max.
It really underlined the knife edge everyone is driving on. One tiny misjudgment, one lapse, race ruined.
Catastrophic consequences for your position, yeah.
So get this. Piastri's got this 10-second penalty hanging over him, effectively pushing him down the order, even though he's still physically near the front. And Verstappen's now way back after his spin. Suddenly, Lando Norris becomes the virtual race leader. That one sequence, the penalty and the spin, just completely flipped the whole Grand Prix on its head. Astonishing turn of events.
Absolutely incredible turnaround.
And amidst all this madness, a truly unexpected hero emerged, someone who just captivated everyone, NICO Hülkenberg.
Ah, yes, what a story.
It was just a remarkable achievement. He secured his first ever Formula One podium, his first, in his 239th Grand Prix start.
239 races. Think about that. Over a decade and a half of trying, of being close sometimes, but never quite there.
And he did it starting from almost dead last, P20. In a car generally considered, one of the weaker ones on the grid. It's just astonishing. Perseverance, resilience, amazing drive.
And his performance, wasn't just luck, though luck played a part with the chaos. It was a masterclass in opportunistic driving. It was this combination of precise strategy from Sauber, capitalizing brilliantly on that chaos, and his own raw skill and veteran experience.
He kept it clean when others didn't.
Exactly. While the Sauber might lack outright dry pace in these tricky mixed conditions, sometimes a well-balanced chassis finds a sweet spot, helps manage the tires. And NICO, he's seen it all, weather-wise. Kept it on the island, made zero mistakes, nailed the strategy calls. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it just underscores how unpredictable F1 can be and the immense mental strength needed. He waited so long for that moment to deliver under that pressure. Truly inspiring.
And you could just feel the emotion afterwards. F1 blogs quoted him saying, "It's all I dreamed of and wanted to achieve. Apart from a championship, this is the best anyone can feel."
You really can't argue with that, can you? Just pure, raw emotion.
A testament to never giving up. A proper feel-good story in a totally chaotic race. But beyond the lead fight and Hülkenberg's amazing podium, there were other fascinating stories unfolding further back too, weren't there? The Spanish drivers, Alonso and Sainz, they had pretty contrasting days.
They really did. It was like a study in two different ways to handle a chaotic race. Alonso, well, he went for an incredibly aggressive strategy gamble. He was the very first driver to pit for dry tires, mediums I think it was, lap 38, when conditions were still really treacherous. Most were still on inters.
Super early call.
Very early. Yeah. And initially it cost him big time. He lost loads of time, dropped right back. You could hear his frustration on the radio. It was widely reported. It's incredible how you never get it right with me.
Ouch. You feel for him sometimes.
You do. The pressure is immense. But then what's remarkable is his recovery. As the track finally dried properly, those medium tires came alive. He just scythed through the field, climbing all the way back to finish 9th. Scored points. The gamble eventually paid off.
Amazing recovery. But in stark contrast, Carlos Sainz. His race just seemed cursed, really. Marred by multiple incidents. Never found a rhythm.
Yeah. It was a tough day for Carlos. He had an off-track moment that cost him time and track position. Then, crucially, he had contact with his teammate Charles Leclerc at one point. Okay. That caused damage, hampered his progress further.
Never ideal, contact with your teammate.
Never. And those issues just compounded. Yeah. He couldn't challenge for points, ended up finishing down in 12th. It just shows how easily a race can unravel in those conditions, no matter how skilled you are. Just one of those days for him.
So, as we got into the final laps, the focus was really back on the McLarens up front. Lando Norris, despite all the pressure, the challenges, managed to maintain his lead over Oscar Piastri. A really impressive controlled drive from him to seal the win.
Absolutely. The McLaren team clearly had the car to beat, especially as the conditions evolved. They just seemed dialed in.
And there were other big battles playing out behind them too, right down to the wire.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton, always strong at Silverstone, right? He mounted a really powerful charge in the later stages, drove skillfully through the changing track to finish a commendable 4th. He was pushing Hülkenberg really hard for that podium in the final laps.
Kept Nico honest.
Definitely. And Max Verstappen, despite that earlier spin, put in a fantastic recovery drive, climbing all the way from 11th back to 5th, salvaging crucial points that, could be vital later on, showcased his ability to bounce back.
So the final rundown. Lando Norris takes his 2nd win in a row, 4th of the season. Dominant performance, really, given the chaos. Oscar Piastri makes it a McLaren 1-2, solidifying their championship hopes. And of course, Nico Hülkenberg, the story of the race, securing that historic 3rd place, his maiden podium. Incredible scenes.
So what does this all mean for the championship picture? Well, Norris's win really tightens things up at the top. He significantly narrows the gap to Piastri. It's incredibly close now, just 8 points separating them. Piastri's on 234, Norris on 226. It's basically an intra-team battle for the title now between the two McLaren drivers.
Wow, that's going to be tense.
Absolutely crucial races ahead for them, and Max Verstappen. Despite starting on pole, he's now, a distant 3rd in the standings on 165 points. Yeah. This McLaren fight is truly the story to watch now. Their car is clearly performing at an incredibly high level. Yeah. Genuine contenders for both titles.
What an incredible deep dive that was. The British Grand Prix really delivered, didn't it? We saw McLaren's dominance growing, that unbelievable, heartwarming story for Nico Hülkenberg, and just how quickly things can turn upside down in F1, especially in the wet.
It truly was a showcase of the human drama, wasn't it? You had Piastri's, let's say, overzealous move, Verstappen's rare but costly mistake, Alonso battling strategy, and somehow making it work in the end, and then Hülkenberg's triumph against all odds. Decades of dedication paying off. It just shows how every single decision, every instinct, every bit of courage matters out there, shapes legacies, shapes championships.
Absolutely. So we'll leave you with this thought to chew on. In a sport that relies so heavily on precision, on data, on meticulous strategy, how much does raw courage and calculated risk-taking, especially when the weather throws the ultimate curveball, how much does that truly impact a championship? Does it sometimes just outweigh all the best-laid plans? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the incredible world of Formula One with us.